On Thursday, March 12, 2026, Iran launched 3 consecutive waves of missile strikes against Israel and American military positions across the Middle East in under 24 hours. Waves 42, 43, and 44 of Operation True Promise 4. The IRGC deployed every major missile class in its arsenal: Khorramshahr heavy ballistic missiles, Fatah hypersonic systems, Khorramshahr precision missiles, and Imad warheads, all fired in a single day. Sirens screamed across Israel. 79 people were injured. This was not a volley, this was a statement. Hours earlier, reports confirmed that Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba, was wounded on the first day of this war, and he has not been seen or heard in public since his appointment. What followed those reports was the most concentrated barrage of firepower Iran has unleashed since this campaign began. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly who Iran hit and what the first order by Iran's supreme leader tells you about where this war is actually heading. Before we continue, thanks a lot for tuning in. Your support is what keeps this show going, and I appreciate you watching. As always, please make sure to subscribe and like the video so I can keep bringing you these critical updates. Here's what we know. The timing of Wave 42 was precise. It landed moments after Iranian state television aired the first official message attributed to Mojtaba Khamenei, the 56-year-old son of the assassinated Ali Khamenei. The wave carried the operational slogan, Labbaik Khamenei, which translates to, "At your service, Khamenei." That phrase is not decoration. It is a military loyalty oath. The IRGC was publicly pledging allegiance to a man nobody can locate with certainty. The missiles were aimed at Tel Aviv and American facilities tied to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Explosive drones were deployed alongside the ballistic launches as part of the same coordinated package within hours. And this is where the escalation shifts. The IRGC announced Wave 43 under a completely different operational code, Yashadid al-Thaqib, meaning "oh, severe punishment." That name was chosen to honor senior Iranian military commanders killed since February 28th, including the late Revolutionary Guard commander, Lieutenant General Hossein Salami. The weapon selection changed dramatically. The IRGC rolled out the Khorramshahr, a liquid-fueled medium-range ballistic missile carrying a warhead in the 2-ton class. That is up to 1,800 kilograms of explosive material traveling at approximately Mach 16 during its final descent. To put that in context, the Khorramshahr's design traces back to North Korean Hwasong-10 technology, adapted and expanded by Iranian engineers over the past decade to reach an operational range of roughly 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers. Alongside those heavy warheads, the IRGC fired Imad missiles carrying multiple warheads, plus Imad and Khorramshahr variants loaded with 1-ton payloads. Targets for Wave 43 included the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, additional American military installations downtown Tel Aviv, and for the first time in Operation True Promise 4, the southern Israeli port city of Eilat. Then came Wave 44. The IRGC said this wave penetrated deeper inside Israeli territory than any strike previously attempted in the entire campaign. Confirmed targets included Kiryat Shmona, deep in northern Israel near the Lebanese border, the major port city of Haifa, and bases connected to the American Fifth Fleet. Israeli media confirmed explosions across the greater Tel Aviv area shortly after sirens activated across the country. 3 waves, every major system in the arsenal. Targets stretching from Eilat in the south to Kiryat Shmona in the far north. That is the full geographic length of Israel under fire in a single day. Most people think Iran is throwing everything at the wall and hoping something lands. In reality, Tehran fundamentally changed its firing doctrine sometime around Wave 30. The IRGC Aerospace Force Commander Majid Musavi confirmed publicly that Iran has stopped launching anything with a warhead under 1,000 kilograms. The shift went from saturating Israeli air defenses with volume to punishing them with mass. Fewer missiles per wave, far heavier impact per missile. AFP described the recent attacks as the most intense and heaviest since the start of the war. That framing matters. The intent is no longer to overwhelm Iron Dome and David Sling with sheer numbers. The intent is to deliver individual payloads so heavy that interception becomes a physics problem, not just a tracking problem. The Fatah, which Iran calls a hypersonic system, was unveiled in 2023 and claims terminal speeds above Mach 13 with a maneuverable flight path designed specifically to defeat layered missile defense. Independent verification of those claims remains limited. But the Khorramshahr is verified, solid-fueled, terminal guidance up to the point of impact, meaning it corrects its own trajectory during the final seconds of descent. That alone makes it a fundamentally different threat than the unguided projectiles Israel trained its defenses against a decade ago. And towards the end, I will show you why this shift in warhead weight connects directly to the one decision Mojtaba made that has nothing to do with missiles at all. Now consider what is happening on the other side of this. CENTCOM announced as of March 12th that American and Israeli forces have struck approximately 6,000 targets inside Iran since February 28th. Over 90 Iranian naval vessels have been damaged or destroyed. B-2 Spirit bombers dropped 30 000-pound GBU-57 bunker busters on the Talagan 2 facility at the Parchin military complex linked to nuclear weapons research. Admiral Brad Cooper released footage showing the destruction of Iranian aircraft at Hashemi Rafsanjani Airport in Kerman, including a C-130 Hercules, a P-3 Orion, and an Ilyushin Il-76. The Israeli Air Force, under its campaign name Roaring Lion, struck 500 military targets using approximately 200 fighter jets in the largest combat sortie in IAF history. 1,200 bombs dropped in the first 24 hours alone. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said the operation will continue without any time limit until all objectives are met. Stay with me, because what I am about to walk through changes everything about how you understand this war, and it has nothing to do with missiles. Admiral Cooper also reported that Iran's ballistic missile launch rate has fallen 90% from day one. Drone launch rates dropped 83%. Defense analyst AJ Jaffe put the decline even steeper, citing a 92% drop from 480 launches per day down to roughly 40. After 1 week, some estimates placed Iran's remaining ballistic missile stockpile at around 1,000 units. Those numbers look like a country running out of ammunition, but Wave 44 just landed with 2-ton warheads. Both of those realities are true at the same time. The volume collapsed, the destructive power per strike increased. That contradiction sits at the center of this entire conflict because it means Iran made a choice. They chose conservation over saturation, precision over spectacle. That is not the behavior of a country on its last legs. That is rationing for a long war. And here is the piece almost nobody is framing correctly. The single most important development since this war started is not military. It is economic. Iran has effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil supply moves through that waterway. Ship tracking data shows tanker traffic collapsed from 24 vessels per day to near zero. More than 200 commercial ships sit stranded or anchored outside the strait right now. The IRGC has attacked at least 5 tankers. 2 crew members are dead. Maersk, the largest container shipping line on Earth, suspended all Hormuz crossings. Maritime insurance premiums are at multi-year highs. On March 11th alone, the UAE intercepted 6 ballistic missiles, 7 cruise missiles, and 39 drones. A drone struck a building near Dubai Creek. Citibank closed all regional branches except one. 6 electricity transmission lines failed in Kuwait from falling interceptor debris. Saudi Arabia shot down drones heading for the Shaiba oil field. Fuel tanks were hit at Oman's Salalah port. Qatar paused liquefied natural gas production. Brent crude oil surged from around $61 a barrel at the end of 2025 to over $100 by mid-March 2026. Reuters reported Brent briefly surged to around $119 earlier in the week, before later trading near $100. Goldman Sachs raised its near-term oil outlook and pushed back its forecast for U.S. Federal Reserve rate cuts, citing higher energy-driven inflation risks. 400 million barrels are being released from global strategic petroleum reserves. Japan, which relies on the Strait of Hormuz for 70% of its oil imports, began emergency drawdowns. And the IRGC issued a statement that should be read as a direct economic threat. You will not be able to artificially lower the price of oil. Expect oil at $200 per barrel. Now, I want to come back to the man at the center of this. Mojtaba Khamenei was elected supreme leader by Iran's Assembly of Experts on March 8th, just 8 days after his father was killed. He won roughly 85% of the vote, though several assembly members said they were not even informed about the emergency session and could not attend. Some clerics objected openly, warning that appointing the dead leader's son looked like hereditary monarchy disguised as theocratic succession. Before this appointment, Mojtaba operated entirely behind closed doors, a power broker with deep ties to the IRGC and Iran's economic elite. The U.S. Treasury sanctioned him back in 2019, specifically for advancing his father's agenda through the Revolutionary Guard. Analysts who have tracked his influence for years describe him as at least as hardline as his father and possibly more extreme. He reportedly played a direct role in the violent suppression of the 2022 Masa Amini protests, and demonstrators at the time chanted his name, calling for his death so he would never assume the supreme leadership. But Mojtaba Khamenei was appointed supreme leader on March 8th, after his father was killed in the opening strikes. Since then, he has not appeared publicly in person. His first public message was read by a state television presenter on March 12th. Reuters reported that Israeli officials assessed he was wounded early in the war, while Iranian-linked reporting said he remained able to function. The Jerusalem Post, citing a source close to the situation, reported that while Mojtaba was wounded, he remains capable of functioning. But functioning and leading are not the same word. Since March 8th, no video of Mojtaba Khamenei has surfaced. No audio, no live broadcast. His first public statement was read aloud by a state television presenter on March 12th. Iranian state media has been circulating archival footage and, according to multiple reports, AI-generated images to fill the visual gap. The president's own son told a state news agency that Mojtaba is safe, but that reassurance came without a single frame of proof. In that statement, the one read by the presenter, Mojtaba, said he learned about his own appointment by watching state television alongside every other Iranian citizen. He described visiting his father's body and seeing what he called a mountain of strength. He expressed grief for his wife, his sister, and his family. Then he issued his first command, not a military order, an economic one. Keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. And then this line, we will not refrain from avenging the blood of your martyrs. Every member of the nation who is martyred by the enemy is an independent subject for the revenge case. That is not a ceasefire statement. That is an open-ended authorization for indefinite escalation. Most people think this war has a stopping point built in somewhere. In reality, neither side has defined what an acceptable end looks like. Trump is demanding unconditional surrender. Ali Larijani, the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, rejected all negotiations and said no ship passes through Hormuz until the war ends. President Pezeshkian listed 3 conditions to stop fighting: recognition of Iran's rights, financial reparations, and binding international guarantees against future attacks. Those conditions and unconditional surrender do not occupy the same universe. Russia's ambassador condemned the strikes. China's foreign minister called them unacceptable. Russia is reportedly providing Iran with intelligence on U.S. military positions, according to unnamed American officials. Trump said there are no time limits on how long the war will continue. There's no mediator. There's no channel. There's no off-ramp that either side has agreed to use. Meanwhile, Hezbollah opened a second front in Lebanon on March 2nd. Reuters reported that on March 12th, it launched its biggest barrage of the war, more than 200 rockets and 20 drones in synchrony with Iran's attacks. Israel responded with expanded strikes in Beirut and elsewhere in Lebanon. Reuters reported that nearly 700 people had been killed in Lebanon and more than 800,000 displaced since the fighting escalated. And sitting beneath all of this, unresolved, is the strike on the girls' school in Manbij. On February 28th, during the opening wave of American attacks, a girls' school next to an IRGC military compound was hit. Iranian officials said around 150 to 175 children were killed. Reuters reported that a U.S. military investigation was leaning toward likely U.S. responsibility, and that outdated American targeting data may have played a role, but the Pentagon investigation has not publicly reached a final conclusion. The White House said it would accept the results of the internal probe. Whatever that investigation ultimately finds, the incident has already become one of the most politically potent events of the war, and Iran has used it heavily for public mobilization and propaganda. So, 44 waves of missile fire and counting. A supreme leader running a war from behind a screen, wounded, unseen, unheard. Oil above $100 a barrel with the IRGC promising $200. 6,000 American and Israeli targets struck inside Iran. 1,348 Iranian civilians dead. 8 American service members confirmed killed. 9 dead in Beit Shemesh from a single missile impact. The Strait of Hormuz functionally closed. 200 ships stranded. Goldman Sachs pricing a 1 in 4 chance of recession. Hezbollah firing from the north. Lebanon on the edge of collapse, and not a single framework for ending any of it. The question is not who is winning. The question is whether anyone in Washington, Tehran, or Tel Aviv has a plan for what comes after this that is built on the war that actually exists, and not the one they expected to fight. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate your support. Join the discussion in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think about the war? Do you think the war is getting out of hand? Let me know. Please subscribe and like the video if you want to stay updated, and click the video on the screen to see another. Thumbnail text